Hi, I'm Zibby Owens, and you're listening to Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. This 30-minute podcast features a new author interviewed by me every single day, 365 days a year, for about 30 minutes. I am also the publisher for Zibby Books, which publishes 12 books a year in fiction and memoir. Our books are already out now. You can check it out on zibbybooks.com. And we have a magazine called Zibby Mag, where we have lots of wonderful essays and lifestyle features. That's at zibbymag.com. We have classes at zibbyclasses.com. And I recently opened a bookstore in LA called Zibby's Bookshop at 1113 Montana Avenue at 11th Street in Santa Monica. I hope that you are able to enjoy some of our other offerings. But this here podcast is the basis of all of it and started in 2018. And no matter what I do, this is basically my favorite thing. Enjoy. James Patterson is back on Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. This time he is discussing the secret lives of booksellers and librarians. Their stories are better than the bestsellers, which comes out in April. And we didn't really touch on what really happens in Vegas, true stories of the people who make Vegas, but that is another one of his books that's coming out. Also, Holmes, Marple, and Poe, the greatest crime-solving team of the 21st century, which we do talk about. James Patterson always has a million things coming out. By the way, fun fact, James Patterson also has a holiday fund, which he gives to bookstore employees. You have to apply or nominate, rather, one of the employees of a store, and their fund selects people who get $500. And one of our Zibby's Bookshop employees, Katrina Lino, who we nominated, was one of the recipients. So thank you, James Patterson, for that. For those who don't know, he is the most popular storyteller of our time. He is the creator of unforgettable characters and series, including Alex Cross, The Women's Murder Club, Jane Effing Smith, and Maximum Ride, and of breathtaking true stories about the Kennedys, John Lennon, and Princess Diana, as well as our military heroes, police officers, and ER nurses. He has co-authored #1 best-selling novels with Bill Clinton and Dolly Parton, told the story of his own life in James Patterson by James Patterson, and received an Edgar Award, 10 Emmy Awards, the Librarian Award from the National Book Foundation, and the National Humanities Medal. Welcome to James Patterson, back on Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books for what, I don't know, the 4th time or something, because you write books so much and so often and so well. Now to talk about the secret lives of booksellers and librarians, true stories of the magic of reading. Congratulations.
Thank you. This line, a nonfiction line, it started with walking in my combat boots. And the mission has always been something that's very readable, but to allow people to understand something that they think they understand, but they really don't. One of the reasons that I went for a sort of a humorous title, The Secret Lives of Booksellers and Librarians, is one, in general, it's a very funny group. They do have a great sense of humor. They're the best audiences ever when I go to these big librarian or bookseller events, because they get all the jokes and they get the literary references, and it's really cool. But people don't really understand, one, how difficult it is in this current age right now where we have book banning and people punching librarians. It's crazy. It's a very, very hard. And it's always been a lot of work. What booksellers do, people think, oh my God, all those books, they all have to be stacked and put in place and taken out and whatever. And so it's really, really, really hard work. I just wanted people to understand. And I wanted to praise them. I wanted booksellers and librarians to go, yes, somebody's telling our story. This is cool.
I definitely learned a lot opening a bookstore less than a year ago. So
that's right.
About all the things that you have to do in all the different functional areas.
Yeah.
And as a writer, I was like, where's my book? And it must be, but booksellers to have limited space. Well, I shouldn't tell you, you obviously know this, but it's hard. It's hard, all the calculations and then physically having to ship things back. And I mean, it's a lot, and input in the computer, and every book decision is huge.
Yeah. And the joy, just so people understand what Matt Eversman and I did, we interviewed a couple hundred booksellers and librarians. And then we have about 60 in the book or so, and we take the 40 or 50 page interviews and turn them into these 5 or 6 page nuggets. So you get a feeling for that bookseller or that librarian, that store or that library, and then a couple of cool stories. Judy Blume was one of the booksellers.
Yes, read that.
And Judy wrote in hers, she said, I had decided after 50 years of writing that I didn't want to write anymore. And then this opportunity came up for her, and she says, so how lucky was I? I was suddenly able to get up in the morning, excited about what I'm going to do, how I'm going to spend my day. I'm excited every day that I go to the bookstore. That is the truth, period. And that's how she feels about her store out in Key West. And that's what drives a lot of the booksellers and librarians, that thrill of recommending a book that turns somebody on and they go, give me another book. And that's how I, feel about a lot of my books that I write. And I'll get this, with the kids' books, people coming back and say, so a lot of times with tears in their eyes, you got my kid reading, which, as you know, is a huge deal. And then a lot of times with adults say, I kind of had stopped reading and I read one of your books and I remember how much fun it was, which is also cool, I think.
I think it's great when people have individual relationships with a specific bookseller in the store.
Yeah.
Right. Where they say, oh, Liz's recommendations, and you say this in some of the interviews in here, that some people will like camp out for 2 days just to be like, I loved it. Give me another one. What else should I read?
Yeah. That is the joy of it. One of the women from Albany, she said, this is one of the booksellers. She said, to me, books are the greatest kind of escapism. I may have a master's degree, but one of my favorite books is Twilight. It's just escapist fiction at its absolute best. To each their own. But my attitude is, listen, I have a kid at home. I have a full-time job. I teach. I have a big life. But I don't want to think about my big life for a little while, for 2 hours. I am not Alexis in Albany. That's the bookseller. I am in the world of Forks, or I'm in Wonderland, or I am in Hogwarts. And there should never be guilty pleasures about reading a book. It's just fine. You're allowed to. That really, I think in some ways, that's what this show is about.
Yes.
That it is hard being a parent, being a mother, but you're allowed.
Yes.
You're allowed to spend that hour and a half with a book and find the time somehow, or watch a goofy movie or whatever. Yes, that is allowed. That is absolutely allowed. And it's good for your sanity.
Exactly.
I'll tell you the funniest, I love life stories. This is my funniest for this week. Friend of mine, his mother was this wonderful Irish lady, had just incredible patience. And he and his two brothers, they were 5, 8, and 10. And it was one of these, it had been snow for like 6 days in a row. And these boys were at each other and jumping on each other and screaming and yelling. And finally, she's in the kitchen. She pulls open the drawer. She pulls out 3 butter knives. She goes, here, here, here. Now kill one another. I love that. It's just such a great butter knives. The next time you butter something, think of that story.
I'm going to, for sure. I will think of that story. Oh my goodness. Yeah. I loved in your Judy Blume part that how it came to be that she opened the Books and Books in Key West from Mitch Kaplan at Books and Books in Miami, who he is like one of the most important and wonderful people.
They're all important and wonderful.
Okay.
They all are.
You're right.
They all are. Most of them anyway.
I don't know all of them, but I do know him. I'm sure I would find them all equally wonderful. But the way that she structured it as a nonprofit, I found very interesting as well. And I didn't know that until I read this.
Yeah. That's popping up around now, that little trick of it allows people to do bookstores who kind of couldn't afford to do it otherwise, which is great.
If you could choose, would you rather be a bookseller or a librarian?
I'd probably rather be a bookseller. My mother was, and I have a book on teachers coming too. My mother was a teacher and a librarian. She was a librarian on the week on Saturdays back in Newburgh, New York. So she did both. So I got a feeling for that. And she used to drag myself and my oldest sister to the library every Saturday. She was 4 to 6 hours. So we would be in the library every Saturday, reading, which was good. Look what happened.
Yeah, that is the secret. If you take your kid to the library 4 to 6 hours a week, you will become James Patterson. There you go. That's it. That's all you have to do.
My sister's a big reader, always has been. The other one that would get dragged. She's not, has chose not to be a writer.
Well, your reverence for booksellers and the way you give back is really unparalleled. And you even have this holiday bonus where you can submit a bookseller and you give out gifts. And actually, one of the women in our store got one of your gifts and it's changing her life. So thank you so much for that.
Well, the great thing about that is more than anything else that we do a lot of college scholarships and stuff. But the booksellers, I swear to God, every single person that we give something to, they send the most wonderful letters. So it really is a joyful thing. We're working on it now, right away when Secret Lives comes out, I think in April or so. we're going to do another gift to booksellers and librarians.
Aw.
So we're working that out to see who's getting a present. None of them are naughty, but what nice ones are going to get something. Yeah.
Why give back so much?
I credit my mother and my grandmother. That's just the way we were brought up. And they did it. My mother, she taught, she worked in the library, as I said. My grandfather and grandfather had a very small restaurant, and they used to, give to people who didn't have any money all the time. It's just the way we were brought up. That was the deal. And it's a funny thing. I was on the Wait, Don't Tell Me, that podcast. All your listeners will know. And I couldn't get back that night from New Haven back to Florida. So I stayed in a hotel. This is a weird one. 6:30 in the morning, I got up, and the nicest person in the world, she was the server. And I just had like a half a bagel and a coffee, whatever. And I don't know what got into me, but I left her $100 tip. And she said, "Oh my God, you've made my weekend." And I said, "You know what? You just made my weekend." And it was just a thing about the joy of giving. There are a lot of sort of well-to-do people in this world that they need to experience the joy of giving more than and then we wouldn't have this thing with people going like, "Oh my God, these people have so much money. Give it away. Give away a lot of it anyway." You don't have to give away all of it. You can still, have nice things. But anyway, so that's what we do.
I'm curious about the current sort of environment for breaking out as a new writer versus when you got started. Yeah. Do you feel like it's harder now?
Yes.
Are there more books, or is that just a perception because it just feels impossible? Or was it always hard? Or do you feel like if you were starting out today and today you were 25 years old publishing your first book or something, what do you think that would be like?
I don't know if I'd make it. There are very few publishers. Some publishers have a bunch of imprints. When I, initially, there were 40, 50 imprints. There were just a lot of publishing houses. That's how I got 31 turndowns on my first book. There were a lot of places. And then it won an Edgar as Best First Mystery, so go figure that one out. But I think it's never been harder. The only thing that makes that is easier now is you can publish your own stuff online, and you can get feedback, and you probably won't make money, but you might. You can go online, and if you can get the word out a little bit, or you can go on. Some people obviously have been very lucky with TikTok, so there are ways to get it out there without a publisher. But I think it's very hard to get published in a traditional way now.
Okay, well, just wondered if it was only my my perception.
No. And everybody, all my published writer friends all talk about that. It's like, oh my God, it's so hard. It's hard for people, even people who have won awards and people who have pretty good track records. It's very tough, very tough. And people aren't reading as much as they should, I think.
Yeah. I don't know if you read this in the New York Times recently, that for the bestsellers on the New York Times list, all of them were repeats, except the only new people who got on the list, 3 of the 5 or so were from the big book clubs. Half of them, and then the remaining 3, one was like a book of the month club pick. And so basically there was only 1 book or so that actually got on the list from a debut author. What do we do about that?
But that's always been true. I think it's always been hard to break on. I was lucky with the first Alice Cross book. It's a funny thing. I mean, the publisher hadn't told me, and all of a sudden I pick up the New York Times and it was number 6. I'm going, I thought this is a mistake. And so I went over to the local Barnes & Noble on Broadway. And it was in the window. And then I went back in the store. And what some writers will do, I still do it, is if you pick up our book, we'll watch you. And if you put it down, it breaks our heart. And if you buy it, if you take it, it makes our day. And to this day, it's still that way. If somebody picks up my book in an airport and I say, at any rate, so I walk in the store, and this woman is looking at the book and whatever. And then she puts it under her arm, and she's walking down the aisle, and then she puts it in her pocketbook. She stole it. And all I'm thinking is, does that count as the sale? Is this a true story? It's weird though. Yeah. So yeah. But it's always been hard, I think, for first novels, unless the publisher really decides they're going to go out there and really, really back it like crazy. And then you have to convince a couple of the chains to believe you. So if Barnes and Noble and Walmart don't believe you, it probably won't happen. So, but it's hard, but it's doable.
So, meanwhile, between The Secret Lives of Booksellers and Librarians, or before that and after that, you have so many more books coming out and have already come out. A book about Las Vegas. What's coming out? What's next up in your pipeline, and what's going on with your younger kids line, and just all of the stuff?
The younger thing is that's calmed down a bit. In January, I think a really fun book, and I actually sold this out in Hollywood, and I said, you should buy it just on the title. And the title is Holmes, Marple, and Poe. And I sold it to Skydance to David Ellison. And he said, well, I love the title, but you have to tell me a little bit more. And he did buy it. But if you can imagine the sort of clever deductions of Sherlock Holmes, that kind of the mind that character had, and then the kind of thorough investigations of Miss Marple, where she was just that great observer of life, and then the kind of surprises and shocks you would find in Edgar Allan Poe stories. And somehow, this book, all of this is happening in New York City in 2024. Okay, so if you like all that, and I do, then you're ready to read Holmes, Marple, and Poe. It's a great team of investigators. They have all of those talents, that deduction, that observation, the surprises, and I think it makes for kind of an unforgettable novel. And it's a little cozy, so it's not like a big murderous whatever. So I think people will really like it a lot. And one of the fascinating things about that process, I write it with a guy named Brian Sitz. Brian worked with me in advertising, and then we did a kids show, Kids Stew, which won like 6 Emmys or something. It was, whatever. But he had never written a novel or anything like it. And then Brian and I got together, and we wrote a Bookshop, one of the novellas. And then Brian is the other brain behind this Holmes, Miss Marple, and Poe book, and he's great. And he's at this point, I think he's 70 or something like that. And he had never written any fiction before. He's great. He just has it. He has that gift. He has that whatever the heck it is. So I think people will like Holmes, Marple, and Poe. And I'm sure there are people listening and watching, whatever, I don't know, we're watching or whatever it is, who go, I don't read James Patterson. That's a silly thing that's silly. That's like saying I never watch Netflix or. No, there's so many things. And the variety is such, and you will like Holmes, Marple, and Poe if you like mysteries. If you don't like mysteries, I wouldn't read that one. Read the Librarians book then.
Your memoir was one of my favorites of yours, I have to say.
Oh, thank you.
I loved that one.
Well, and once again, I don't think people would expect that. And that's where I mentioned before about the Librarians or the book about the soldiers. I love it when people think they understand something, but they don't. Mm-hmm. And you go like, oh, okay, that's not what I thought. You're right about the memoir. Most people, especially people who don't read my books, would say, I have no interest. If you read it, you go, okay, I really had no idea who this guy was, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
For better or worse.
No, well, they should know that you're very funny. I mean, the little excerpts that you do are very funny. And I feel like you've also conquered how to keep people's attention. I feel like that's something that you're really good at, whether it's a memoir or, shortened interviews or mysteries or, the book about, I'm forgetting the title, but Football Family, The Wolves.
House of Wolves. Yeah, I've written a couple now with Mike Lupica, and we're on the show, your podcast once too.
Yeah.
And we just have a blast together. We have so much fun. It's like a sane writer's room where the two writers love each other. It is a good, really great relationship. The 12 Months to Live, I think, is the one we were on for, I think. And that's another one. It's just a fun book to read. And it is very funny. So anyway, we'll continue with that, but it's good. I tell you what I have this year a little later, which is in June, is Michael Crichton's estate approached me. And Michael, who I loved his books, from yes. Westworld. I don't know if that was a book actually, but Jurassic Park, et cetera, Disclosure, Andromeda Strain. And he had started a book and only wrote about 70 pages or whatever the number of pages was. And the estate came in and said, would you like to finish it? And I said, well, I don't know. Let me read what he wrote. And I read what he wrote. And it starts with this volcano, which is threatening to destroy the island of Hawaii. And then there's something even worse than that, which is involved in those pages. And I went, yes, I want to try to do this. I want to try to complete this book. And I love the challenge of writing a book that you could not put down, hopefully, and I don't think you can with this book. It's called Eruption, but also a lot of science, which I'd never done before. And Michael graduated from Harvard Medical School, but never practiced, which is really fascinating. He decided I'd rather be a writer.
Well, at least he got the degree. There he goes.
He got the degree. Yes, he did. Yes, he did.
That's amazing. So what advice do you have for authors who are trying to become the next you?
Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that. The advice for real estate, location, location, location. I think in terms of popular fiction or popular nonfiction, it's story, story, story. And, and people don't have a lot of time for things. That's the whole purpose of your podcast. And so they have to select, which is hard. And you need to be aware as a writer that for a lot of people, they don't have the time that they'd like to have. And their attention span is low anyway. When I was out with President Clinton, he talked about how the attention span of a butterfly was 9 seconds, and the attention span of a human is 8 seconds. So, and you just have to be aware of that. And my notion, which I've said before, is I pretend I'm sitting across from somebody, I'm telling them a story, and I don't want them to get up until I finish. And that's a good thing to think about if you want to ultimately make money doing this. That, you treasure your reader's time when you're writing and don't get caught up in your words and your stuff that nobody cares about. I mean, a certain kind of book, the book that's, it's harder if you just go off and you're just going to write 1,000 pages that you want to write. And you may be a wonderful craftsperson. You're taking a big chance in terms of one, it getting published, and two, as good as it might be, and secondly, being able to make a living doing it, because that's people mostly don't. That's hard for a lot of people. 1,000-page, oh my God, and no paragraphs. Yeah, 1,000 pages, no paragraphs. There's something out right now. I can't remember the name of it, and I won't publicize it. But no paragraphs. Okay, fine. I'm sure it's good, but I'd like paragraphs. I like to reward myself. Oh, I finished a paragraph. Oh, I finished a chapter. What fun! Yeah.
Yes. Well, you also keep all of your chapters quite short. All of your things are quite short. So you definitely, even the little books that you have in, the little book visuals you have in this one, just to get you to the end of a section, so you can feel that accomplishment.
Yeah. Well, that's okay. That's a nice thing for people within reason. The Crichton book, some of the chapters are a little longer because, once again, it's a Michael Crichton, James Patterson book, and it shouldn't just feel like a Patterson book. It should feel like a really collaboration, good collaboration.
And do you, just in closing, have any favorite libraries or bookstores that you want to highlight?
All of them. Newburgh, New York, my hometown, man, where my mom was. The library is still there. Actually, they just opened a bookstore in town. I don't remember ever. I'm sure there were, but I don't remember any when I was a kid. But they've just opened one, and the name escapes me right now. But you'll be able to find it because it's the only one in town. So I'm gonna and in Palm Beach, where I am, Classic Books will give them a shout out too. Good people, but they're all good. It's a noble thing to do. It's hard work, and for the most part, there's not a lot of money in it. So God bless all of them.
Amazing. Well, congratulations on your latest release and all of the great things that you do, of course. So
thank you. This has been good. Thanks so much.
All right. Have a great day.
You're good at this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram at Zibby Owens and at Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. Also sign up for my newsletter at zibbyowens.com and sign up for my virtual book club and meet lots of authors on Zoom every other week. Thanks so much to Steve and Ryan at Texture Sound for the sound editing. And thank you to Morning Moon Productions for providing this fantastic intro and outro music.